Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of the Bastard Review. This time around I'm looking at the second annual NWA Starrcade. This event took place November 22nd, 1984 in the Greensboro Coliseum in Greensboro, North Carolina. We start off the night with Mike Davis defending his NWA World Junior Heavyweight title against Denny Brown. This match starts off strong but then gets a bit confusing at the end. About midway through, Mike makes good use of an injury Denny sustains during the match, wisely focusing his attention on capitalizing on it. The end sees Mike give Denny a belly-to-back suplex with a bridge into the cover, but Denny gets his shoulders up. Here's the kicker, though. The ref still counts to 3. I had to watch it a second time. He counted because both men's shoulders were on the mat during the count. Denny got his up while Mike didn't. Thus, Denny gets the pin and wins the title. It seemed like a weak way to give Denny what I'm assuming is his first title win. It would have worked if he was the heel, but going into the match, neither man really seemed to define who was who, and thus it doesn't work for me. To make matters even more confusing, the announcer claimed that Mike retained the title, but corrected himself when the ref interceded. A short match with a lackluster ending. I'm giving this a 5 out of 10. The next match is between Mr. Ito and Brian Adidas. There really isn't much to say about this one. I wouldn't necessarily call it a squash match per se. It's just really too short of a match to even judge. Therefore, I'm not giving it a rating. After that, Jesse Barr defends his NWA Florida Heavyweight title against Mike Graham. I like the way that Jesse plays the heel using common tactics like pulling the hair and using the ropes as leverage. This is an entertaining match that starts slow and builds to a believable conclusion. My only criticism is that Mike uses a figure 4 leg lock as his signature move. It would be fine if Ric Flair, who also uses it as a signature move, wasn't on the card, but he's in the main event. To have it in such an early match, I don't know, seems like Mike's stepping on Flair's toes. Couldn't he have used another type of submission? One last thing, why should the people in North Carolina care about seeing a title from another state defended in theirs? I kept wondering that throughout the match. It doesn't take away from my enjoyment, though. I'm giving this a 7 out of 10. Up next, the Zambaya Express take on the Assassin and Buzz Tyler in a tag team elimination match. Honestly, the less said about this, the better. Thankfully, it was very short. The crowd seemed to be into the match, but I really can't see why. I'm giving this a 3 out of 10. After that, Black Bart defends his Brass Knuckles heavyweight title against Manny Fernandez. Yeah, Brass Knuckle title. No joke. It's the NWA equivalent to a hardcore title where there are no rules. What it comes down to is a mock fist fight that the crowd eats up, but I find rather bland and boring. Manny's entrance music is Michael Jackson's Beat It, which wouldn't be as funny if Manny didn't come out dressed as a mariachi player. It's just a really odd combination. About 3 minutes into the match, both men have their foreheads busted open, and that's about as exciting as it gets. I can understand the need for a stipulation where the rules are thrown out, but having a title around it is highly unnecessary. I'm giving this a 3 out of 10. The next match, well, if one can call it a match, Jimmy Valiant takes on Paul Jones in a tuxedo street fight where the loser leaves town. What an amusing match. For those who don't know, Paul Jones was a manager at the time, though he did wrestle in the 70s. Jimmy ties Paul up in the ropes and then rips off Paul's tux right down to his underwear. We get our second ref bump of the night, and it seems like if they were going to use it here, they shouldn't have used it earlier. I'm not going to rate this because it's hardly a match, it's more of an extended segment, but a fun one. After that, Ron Bass defends his NWA Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight title against Dick Slater. It seems like Dick is more interested in getting his hands on Ron's manager, J.J. Dillon, than actually wrestling. He also lets his emotions carry out his actions, which leads to him being disqualified when he pushes the ref away while attacking Ron. If this match was about revenge, then why make it a title match? A story with a lot of potential, Dick should have kept his eyes on the prize. I'm giving this a 6 out of 10. Up next, Keith Larson and Ole Anderson take on Ivan and Nikita Koloff. This grudge match came about when Ivan and Nikita turned on Don Conrodal, Ivan's former tag team partner, and severely injured him. Ole, who had partially trained Don, came to his aid and chose Keith as his partner since Keith had been feuding with the Koloffs as well. The groundwork for what a solid tag team match should include is shown here. Ivan spends the first 8 or 9 minutes in the ring getting dominated by Keith and Ole, who make use of consistent tags but don't overdo it. Then Ivan manages to tag in Nikita and the roles reverse for a bit. Both teams do a great job of pulling the audience into the match, even though little goes on athletically. The end sees Nikita attack Don, who is ringside in support, with Ole coming to his aid and thus allowing Ivan to get the pin over Keith. The heels may win, but in a sudden burst of energy, Don gets into the ring and attacks both with his crutch. It's a really entertaining match with a really good story behind it. I'm giving this an 8 out of 10. After that, Tully Blanchard defends his NWA World TV title against Ricky Steamboat. Weeks earlier, Ricky had been attacked by Tully, Ron Bass, and Black Bart. In addition, Blanchard had recently beat Mark Youngblood, the brother of Ricky's one-time tag team partner Jay, for the TV title. Both men also put up $10,000 of their own money, seemingly for some unexplained reason. Unlike the Bass-Slater match, I can see why the title was included here, because Tully had won it off of Mark, so the possibility of Ricky going after the title on his behalf isn't out of the realm of believability. This was a solid enough match. Steamboat gives Blanchard a really nice vertical suplex early on. About halfway through, Tully gets busted open, which I kind of thought was unnecessary and added very little to the match. The high point, no pun intended, is when Ricky bounces back from a possible suplex by his opponent and goes for a frog splash onto a now prone Tully. The end sees Tully retain via use of a foreign object. Again, the heel wins, and I have to wonder if neither this title nor the Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight title were going to change hands. Why have separate matches? Why not consolidate both into a non-title tag team match? It's a good heelish win for Tully, but I came away feeling let down that the only title matches so far haven't meant much. I'm giving this a 7 out of 10. Next, Wahoo McDaniel defends his NWA US title against superstar Billy Graham. Billy had some silly gimmick where he comes out to Carl Douglas's Kung Fu Fighting and then does mock karate chops. Honestly, a guy like Billy Graham doesn't need some hokey gimmick to get over the audience. This was a very short match, and if there was any rhyme or reason to it, you've got me. Neither men had a feud going on to my knowledge, and if they did, the commentators sure didn't bother to play it up. I also have no clue who the heel was in this match. People were cheering for Wahoo, so I don't think they bought into his heel persona. To me, it felt like just an excuse to get them on the card and little else. I'm giving this a 4 out of 10. Finally, we come to the main event. Ric Flair defends his NWA World Heavyweight title against Dusty Rhodes, and yet again money is on the line for seemingly no reason, this time $1 million. In addition, if the match went to a 60-minute draw, there were 3 celebrities brought in to decide a winner. Duke Kimuka, Kyle Petty, and Joe Frazier, with Joe as guest referee. The match starts off strong with both men trying to outthink the other. In a brilliant display of psychology, Dusty puts Rick in a figure 4 leg lock. Tonight, Flair continues a long-running trend of going high risk only for his opponent to catch him, this time with Dusty sending Flair to the mat with a body slam. The match is ruined by a horrible finish. Dusty gets busted open after Rick sends him into the outside of a turnbuckle. After a few seconds, Frazier stops the match due to excessive bleeding, awarding Flair with the win. Considering that I've seen people bleed worse in other matches, that Frazier would stop the match is such a lame way to end it, and a terrible way to end the show. Flair may be the beloved face, but this feels like a cheap win, and the face shouldn't get a cheap win. If I were in the audience, I would have been disappointed the match didn't at least go to the time limit draw. At least I would have been content to see a good 60-minute match. This was 15 minutes that started to build but had no payoff. I'm giving this a 4 out of 10. Overall, Starrcade 84 is an average show. There are only a few matches on here worth your time, which is disappointing because there's a lot of big names on this card. The show could have been immensely better with some restructuring and definitely allowing the main event to go to its hour draw. Finally, while I'm willing to somewhat overlook the abysmal production value since this was the early days of closed-circuit shows, by the end the constant miscues really make the NWA look unprofessional, and I hope it was something they learned from for future shows. I'm giving this a 5 out of 10. Thank you for listening. Please tune in again to another Basta review when I review another wrestling DVD in my collection, or anything else that crosses my path.